Some of you listeners are business owners, so you understand branding. So moms and dads, how can you understand the connection between branding strategies and parenting? The answer is the emphasis is on effective communication and nonverbal cues that positively impact your role as a mom and dad. This is an important part of shaping meaningful relationships with your children. Today, the guest is Rich Kozak, and he talks about something super cool, and that is the link between branding tricks and parenting magic. So don't miss this episode filled with stories and wisdom from branding that can be seamlessly applied to parenting, and that creates meaningful connections that will last a lifetime. Does your child have a speech-language delay and you really want them to talk? Do difficult behaviors derail home life and you know the frustration is a communication struggle? Does your child see a speech therapist and you wonder, what do they do and how can I help? If these or similar questions are in your mind, this podcast is for you. Hello, my name is Dina Lynn Rosenbusch. I am a speech-language pathologist that has worked with children from birth to 21 for 3 decades. And in my classrooms, I see you wanting to connect with the heart of your child, but their speech and language skills create a barrier. So if you have a kiddo that has difficult behaviors, needs to expand their language or learn to say speech sounds, and maybe even receives speech therapy, stay tuned, because in this podcast, you will learn how to use your daily life as a tool to communication practice and how to do that practice. You will become confident knowing you are making the difference you want to make. And you will hear success stories of parents who have navigated these struggles already. We'll do this all while focusing on building deep, meaningful connection and confidence in your kiddo. So grab a cup of coffee along with a notebook and pen. It's time to speak in the way your child's brain understands. And that is the language of play. I'm so glad to be back with you today. I want to share with you that last time I said I was on my way to the solar eclipse. In fact, I was recording prior to it. Now I am recording right afterwards to add this into the intro, just to tell you that if you ever have an opportunity to stand in the track of the total solar eclipse, it is so worth your time. It was amazing. My pictures are not nearly as good as what NASA does, but at the same time, the experience of the change in gravitational pull, the temperature change as the sun gets hidden by the moon, and the breeze, and all of the things that made the event the event. I do hope that someday you will be able to attend such a thing with your child. Now, this thing is cool, just in and of itself. But how does doing something like this pertain to your child and communication? This would be one of those shared experiences that you can talk with your child about what it is that they see. What do they feel? What does it sound like? What does it look like? And of course, you don't talk about it necessarily during the event. You talk about it before, so you're using future tense, and then during the experience, you might point at things and name a few things. But then after the experience, you talk in past tense, what it was like, what happened. When you have a shared experience, and it doesn't need to be as dramatic as a total solar eclipse, but it's still called into my mind that when we have our children with us for any shared experience, we have these opportunities to really enhance their language by talking about the situation. We don't pepper them with questions. Rather, we talk about the experience. Wow, was that neat? Did you feel this? I felt that. Look over there. So it truly becomes a conversation. So if you've ever wondered how to use conversation to be able to help your child expand vocabulary, use past tense, change their pronouns to be the correct pronouns, pronounce words correctly, any of these things, We will be mentioning multiple of these things during our interactive webinar that we will be having in May. So mark your calendars. It is scheduled for May 13th. That is the day after Mother's Day in the United States. And more information will be coming. Sometimes having these shared experiences help us to form who we are as a family. It helps us to form how we communicate as a family. As we do this, we realize what areas we want to develop as a family and what ways we want to develop as parents as well. This leads us nicely into today's guest speaker. Rich Kozak from Rich Brands will talk to us about developing a family brand. This wasn't something I had thought about before, but I love his analogy. And I think that you might be able to easily relate it to shared experiences and how we become a family in our own way, our own style. All right, let your imagination fly as you listen to this conversation with Rich and think about what are the characteristics you want to pull into, to sink into with your own family as you create your family brand. Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining today on The Language of Play. Today, I have Rich Kozak here with me, and he has been defining and languaging brands for 47 years and teaching the process. So what does that have to do with parenting? Probably a lot of things. You might be surprised. So let me introduce to you Rich Kozak. Rich, thank you for being here. I'm so glad you have a fun message to tell, and I'm eager for our listeners to hear you.
Well, thank you for having me. There is a lot of connection between parenting, which I'm still doing, and what I do for a living. Here's the connections between a brand coming alive. What that means is if it's you or if it's your business, the perception that others have of it is the brand. It's not what you think it is. It's what everybody else thinks it is. So communication is huge. Lowering people's barriers to get messages to land is huge. Sometimes that takes being playful. Nonverbals are huge. The clarity with which a brand speaks shapes its impact. Oh, can we just change brand to parent? Yeah. The clarity with which a parent speaks or doesn't speak or listens shapes its impacts on the child. So there is a lot of connection. I raised 2 boys and now I have 3 granddaughters. So it's like I've got the best of both worlds, I guess. Both of my sons are achieved Eagle Scouts in their scouting days, which was decades ago. And that means I was very involved with a lot of boys. I was deeply involved with the troop and helping them move along. And that's character shaping. And I live in an area where there are a lot of immigrants, often first generation, multiple languages, Korean, Chinese, Spanish, in addition to English. And some of those kids are ADHD and some of them have learning disabilities, and whomever they are, they're in scouting, right, with everybody else. So it's like, you don't only have your own kids, you got everybody else's kids. So there's some fair learning that goes on about sometimes the power of not speaking and listening and watching and being, let's call it, practicing your sensory awareness. You watch, and I'm trained in neurolinguistics programming. That's the term. You watch what's happening. Did their eyes dilate? Did their heartbeat change? Did their face flush? It's like, did they speed up their speaking? Because you become sensory aware because it tells you things.
Let's stop there for a moment and talk about what kinds of things would you notice? Like when you see the eyes dilate and somebody's speeding up and they're flushing a little bit in their face, how do you interpret that?
Well, depending what prompted it, those things can often mean that they went to a different level of attention. Could be it landed on them, or it could be it triggered something. But it's when something changes, it's a sign to listen better, to pay attention, because something's changing, and asking hey, are you okay? Did you just feel something? I feel, a sense that, what did you hear? Anything, just I'm talking.
So when you're saying listening better, what I'm hearing is that you're asking good questions. You're identifying what it is that you see as a change and talking about that with the child.
In a response to seeing it by listening quietly and watching, and being aware. Absolutely. One of the people that I work with now, and she and I are going to be on a panel at the Ultimate Wealth Camp in Las Vegas on next Monday. Her name is Elizabeth. She's from Canada. And she was a principal. She wants to talk to parents about talking to their teens. And she has a book, and it's about courageous conversations, because teens don't talk. I worked with Lisa Nichols for 3.5 years in motivating the teen spirit, watching teens and how closed in they were and how they keep everything inside and they put glitter on it. And how you doing? Oh, I'm great. They're not great. Yeah. You got to do better than that. Yeah. But they don't talk. And when they don't talk, we don't know what's going on. Then there's a suicide. And it's like, what? So listening and engaging is so important. I'm a musician. I mentioned that to you early on. Music is a nonverbal, but it creates harmony. It fills the room with harmony. It's something you can dance to or move to. It creates an emotion. It's powerful. So when in scouting, we did this thing called, got kids from all kinds of backgrounds. And if we were over a weekend on a camping trip, there's a thing in the scout law called the Scout's Own. It's a service, but it's not a church service. It's a appreciating nature, saying. We always added music to that for that reason.
I think music is like a language of its own.
And it's universal.
Yeah.
It's nonverbal. Harmonic.
And you feel it. You don't think it.
It's vibration. It's energy.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah. And it can create connection.
Mm-hmm.
It can also plant a seed of wonder or maybe interest in a child. We used to sit our kids, I play in a Messiah orchestra for 28 years. So I'm sitting there playing my violin, and we'd sit the kids right up front, so they could what's that long, tall, bassy thing? Oh, look at the lady with the cello, kind of fall in love with whatever they could find, because you never know. It's what people get an urge, oh, that's kind of cool. And you encourage them to try it. When a boy turns Eagle Scout, they get letters from former Eagle Scouts that are who's like astronauts. The director, Steven Spielberg, was an Eagle Scout. And he sends letters and says, when I was scouting and I was looking at merit badges and I thought, movie making, that sounds sort of cool.
Look where that went, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Right. That one turned out really well. Right. Yeah. And so in a young age, when your children are 2 to 12, that's such a impactful time that you want to put in front of them things that they can perk up. And music is a perker, or not. Sports, music, anything, chess, horses, but to put in front of them to see what they respond to.
With adults too, and older children.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when you start to spark inside us, that is that play, isn't it? We spark and we follow it.
I was backpacking in Italy on the island of Elba, sleeping under a boat, and somebody said, Riccia, the water ski. And I'm like, what? I never water skied in my life. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. They couldn't get rid of me. Can I go again? It's right? You find things that you resonate with. Yeah. And sometimes you didn't even know they exist. You weren't even paying attention.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, good. You talked about nonverbals. I know that our nonverbals speak much louder than our words to our kids and to everybody. We all listen more to nonverbal than we do to the actual words that are spoken. It's the tone and all of that. What have you learned about nonverbals?
Well, here is the face slapper, the wake-up call, the cold reality. And that is, I think the number is 67% of communication is nonverbal. 30-something, 20 is inflection, and a very small percentage is the words. And
Yeah,
I
I've heard
understand
5% and I've heard 7%. That's it.
you have a degree in speech pathology. So it's like, it's not the words, so if all they can do is grunt, they have the opportunity to go, or, I mean, that's the 37%. It's like inflection is huge. Wow, I sure did have a good time on this date is a lot different than, wow, I sure did have a good time on this date. It's like, it's a big difference. So nonverbal is literally everything else. It's posture. It's energy is what it is. He says, everything is energy. Well, it is. And that's why nonverbal is 67%. Because unless you're a really good actor, your unconscious mind is giving you away all the time. And so if you ask your children, hey, honey, tell the lady what you think. And they go like, I really liked it. And they're shaking. The unconscious mind can't lie. It just can't. It gives us away all the time. That's why you need to.
I want to tell you a little story on this. We had a lady next door. She has since passed away, but she was in her mid-70s and she was a smoker and she had that smoker's cough and that smoker's voice, so she was kind of raspy. And she came out one time to the car and I was driving my then 14-year-old son. And he had chosen not to put his coat on. It's Minnesota and it was January. And I was like, I'm not going to argue this time. I just said, fine, get in the car. And he gets in the car and she was crossing the road to get her mail. And so we rolled down the window and say hi. And she kind of backhands his arm a little bit and says, where is your coat? And he says, at home, in this meek, you're still young and stupid, huh?
It was a mistake.
But then when we drove away, somehow, and I don't know how she did it, but it's this nonverbal thing. He knew she loved him. That's what he got from it. She really likes me.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting? Because what she said wasn't that nice, but somehow it's all that nonverbal and all of that inflection thing. And, because her words were not that. And so, that's how she talked all the time to us. And we knew she loved us.
That's a beautiful example.
Yeah.
There was a transfer of energy. Maybe it was because of the way her eyebrows were, her face, just how much she cared. Yeah. He could tell.
No, I don't know what it was, but it was so real, so raw. Here she was, and he was 14. None of us had any training like you're talking about in neurolinguistics stuff. We left that scene where he had been cuffed and put down, and he's like, she loves me.
Well, yeah, I believe that probably is a reflection on how he was raised. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
But he recognized it because some kids don't know that, It depends how long they've been in the foster care system, 2 or 3 transfers, and they're not lovable anymore as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, that's a whole nother aspect, isn't it? A whole nother topic for discussion. But that's lots of stuff comes out of that.
So you're absolutely true. It is absolutely true that there's a lot of connection between how a company or a brand, even if it's one person, attracts how others to resonate with it and bring it in, and the way a parent or an individual attracts another individual or a child and brings it in. There's a lot of similarity. It's about communication. And one of the big guidelines is doing it with heart. We write down the impacts a brand clearly sees having when it thrives. We ask ourselves, what characteristics must the brand get credit for to make those impacts? And if so, you have to be a good listener, or you have to be caring, or you have to be technology centric. And we literally prioritize those because for the brand, it must get credit for them. It can't just have them. It has to get credit for them to make its impacts, to attract people. It's the same thing with parenting. I'm just saying. I never thought it was talking to you that made me make the connection, but I mean, I'm a parent. I totally get it. It's about communication and how we communicate or not. So I will share this with you. This cost me a lot of money, and I'm going to give it to you for free. This came from one of my coaches. He coaches heads of state in how to speak and connect with entire populations, right? In a speech. He pointed out in one of his trainings that there are 4 states of communication: performance, presentation, conversation, and connectedness. Performance would be like Robin Williams. Presentation would be like corporate executive doing a PowerPoint presentation at the highest level. Conversation would be kind of what you and I are having right here. I speak, you listen, you speak, conversation. Connectedness would be, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but standing nose to nose, almost touching almost closer than our culture says you should be, looking at somebody's eyes for an hour until you're both in tears and your hearts have connected.
That sounds like a difficult thing to try to do.
This is how I learned it. I came out, he talked about it. It's about true deep connection. I came out of a self-development weekend, and one of the other gentlemen and I had done a bunch of breakouts together. We were hugging each other in the lobby, and a couple of the women who had been, they started glomming, and there's a glom of people now, and more people glom and glom. I think it got up to about 16 or 17 people. And we just stood there hugging. And then we started like rocking. It was an hour and 20 minutes.
That's interesting.
Yeah, all right. And let me tell you something. It doesn't take that long. I went to a thing where they do concentric circles, and you know a bunch of people, but then you don't know. But you have to, you get matched with a person, and they say, you look at them and you say, what I love about you is, and you even know them, the things you say land so beautifully. There's a lesson there. First of all, we can sense the energy of a person, even how they dress, the way they hold themselves, and tell them what we love about them that we see or that we sense. That's one lesson. And the other lesson is what we say with our heart can change a person's life. And that goes for a child. When we raise our voice versus saying, what you just did reminds me how special you are and how much I love you. Big difference. Yeah.
That's really powerful.
Thank
you for being here. Yes. Thank you for being here.
Are you sure you're a branding guy? Yes, I am. 47. But it's not about branding. Right. It's about people. We all get to make the biggest, the most significant contribution in the world to the lives we touch with the gifts we've been given. Praise God. It's not about branding. Branding is just a process. It's just steps. It's guiding a perception. It's communication. It's shaping a consistent perception that drives a brand of reputation in the strategic direction it needs to go. People don't think that though, because the world makes them think about branding something else. It's not about branding. It's about we all get to make the most significant impact. Let's get on with it.
Beautiful.
I love what you do. I lift it up. What a blessing. So thank you for your work. I'm
sitting here thinking just, wow, you've given us lots of information to think about. And it's kind of hard for me to even talk right now. But this is good, really good. And this is one of those episodes that parents might want to re-listen to because there's a lot of content and a lot of stories. So thank you very, very much, Rich, for being with us today on The Language of Play.
Well, you're very welcome. It was my pleasure.
Hey parents, I hope you found this episode helpful. If so, would you please take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who also lives or works with children? I would really appreciate it if you would leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. I read every review, and it lights me up to know that this show is making a difference. Then come join my Facebook community, where you'll meet other parents who are dedicated to helping their children grow too. You'll find the link in the show notes. Thank you for joining me. Now it's time to go. Let's pop our kiddos in the strollers and go look around outdoors and see what we have to talk about.